Yo, what's good, guys? We are back at it again with the little season wrap up of like my tier list content and the best players in the game at each position. And that's what this is going to be, right? This is going to be what I think are the best teams you can make. So, what I did is I went through each position. I picked three players that I think are more than acceptable to be on God squads at each of their positions that give you the best chance to win, that are comp players. Um, and I went through and picked them, right? MLB is a little more subjective with the swings and whatnot, but from a top 50,000 rated World Series player, these are the guys I think at each position can crack anybody's lineup, and they all have an argument for being in the lineup. So I tried to pick guys that were primarily set three. As you know, from the time you guys are seeing this video, there'll be less than a little over a week, I think, left in set three. So those set two cards will be phased out and they will be irrelevant coming very soon, depending on if you wildcard them or not. I will have wildcard options in this video, as well as the best pitchers and relievers, in my opinion. But before any of that happens, I want to thank you guys for all the support on the channel recently. And as always, if you like the content, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. These videos do take a while. They are some of my more effort heavy videos, let's say, and it does take a while. So let's get started. Let's go around the diamond. So left field, my very first option, I think, is Randy Arozarena. The defense is a little rough, I will admit, but he swings a crazy bat, basically has max power. If you put one parallel on him, he does. Has great contact, has a pretty decent swing, in my opinion, and I think he would be my third pick for left fielders in the game. I tried to keep it to primary positions, but if I thought somebody was better in a secondary, then that's what I did. So let's go on back. Pick Randy. My second pick for left fielder, it's Dylan Cruz. I think he has the contact numbers that will play. I think he is very good. I think his swing's a little overrated. It was very bad when he first came out. They have fixed it to where it's slightly better, but I still don't love the swing. The contact numbers are there. The power numbers are there. He's going to play a good corner spot. Not really a primary center fielder, in my opinion, because of the speed he has. I think he has 88 base speed. If you want to superfractor him and get him up to that like 93, then he could probably play a good center field for you. But up until that point, I think he's best off in a corner. So our number one left fielder is going to be the new Andrew McCutchen. Again, very similar to Cruz. I think he's a little bit slow to be your primary center fielder. I think he's going to miss a lot of balls that the other top tier center fielders would be able to get to in time. But his contact numbers are crazy, even if the power is a little bit low. You start to put some parallels on this card. All the people that used the collection one last year are going to know that this swing is nasty. The card we got last year was probably the best McCutchen that we ever got, but this one is almost very similar to that collection one, if not the same card with live quirks. So I do really enjoy this McCutchen card, and I think he would be my number one pick for left field moving forward. So center field, my number three pick for center fielders, I think Byron Buxton, right? The contact numbers mean he will probably struggle on those super high difficulties. But the defensive value he brings is immense. He basically has, I think he has max power all the time. Has that 99 speed, and a lot of people like his swing. I don't love the swing, but I think the stats are too good, and the defensive value he brings in center field is too good to ignore. And I don't think there's too many people messing with Byron Buxton. My number two option, surprise, surprise. For some people, it probably is a genuine surprise. It's Mickey. Very similar argument to Buxton. Has immense defensive value. I think next to Buxton, he's probably the number two best defensive center fielder in the game. And he is a switch hitter. So he has that. The only thing Buxton really has over him is arm strength, and I think he might have slightly better reaction. But Mickey is a switch hitter. A lot of people hit good with this Mickey, but a lot of people hit poorly with this Mickey, which is why my number one option and my center fielder on my team is King Griffey Jr. A card similar to Cruz and McCutchen will probably struggle at those lower parallels to have that top end range. But if you do get this card super factored, I think he has more reaction than Mickey and Buxton, and he has similar speed. He'll have 95 speed max, I think. So absolutely disgusting, and we all know how Griffey's swing is. It's butter, especially with the Ripken boost, making him basically 125 across the board, super factored. He is essentially an in-game card, and he plays like it. So, right field, my number 3 pick would be Jock Peterson, a Jock Peterson card that can play some defense. However, definitely should not be in center field. I see a lot of people putting him in center field. Should not be there. He's a little bit slow, has a little too poor of reactions for my taste in center field, but in a corner spot, he brings an absolutely elite bat, will always have 125 clutch. So anytime there's a runner in scoring position, you're going to have that biggest PCI possible. And his swing is butter, one of the most unaffected lefty-lefty swings in the game. Doesn't really matter if he's facing Randy or John Don. His leg kick is so early and it's so out of the way. By the time the pitch is coming in, you don't even know that you're using a lefty. Jock has a lot of value in that regard. Number 2, Hank Aaron. 2 and 1 are probably debatable. But with my experience, they both mash, and you could make an argument, obviously, for a lot of these guys, right? You can put them in any outfield position you want for the most part. But you could argue that the number 1 right fielder and number 2 right fielder should both be on the field at the same time, and you would not be wrong. But with Hank, a lot of people really like his swing, even though he is a push hitter. A card I did not really get the privilege to use. Unfortunately, I took him last, and by the time I got to him, I feel like better outfielders had already come out. So a card I didn't really get to use, but a card that tortures me online. A lot of people hit really good with him. The defense is just a little questionable for me, which is why my number 1 pick at right field would be this Ronald Acuna. He has been immaculate for me. He's been so good. One of the best right-handed swings in the game. Every year, I knew what I was getting when I picked this Acuna. I took him over the number 1 catcher, in my opinion. He is absolutely nasty, has a ton of live quirks, turns on everything, is an early demon. If you're just early with your timing, he'll yank a lot of stuff out, and he plays an absolutely elite, stellar right field. Acuna, without doubt, is staying in my outfield for the foreseeable future. Moving across the diamond to third base, I've been singing this Josh Donaldson's praises for a long time. Insane value of a card. Just absolutely great swing. A lot of good quirks. Plays a great third base defensively. There's really not a whole lot to not like about him. The contact numbers are a little low against righties. If you're running like the Rollins boost, that can help out with that. He's 125 across the board in that case, and he gets a little bit faster. But I think his time has kind of come, and it is about to come anyway because the season's about to turn over. And I don't think this is a card worth wildcarding. So, our number 2 option at third base, Rafi Devers, the new Rafi card. Absolutely disgusting swing, right? If you use his gold at the start of the year, if you use his charisma card at the start of the year, he has one of the better lefty swings in the game, has every hitting quirk known to man. This card is absolutely nasty. The only place he probably will struggle is defensively. So, maybe you would want to consider like DHing him or moving him across the diamond to first base. That's up to you. But I think he has a lot of value as a third baseman that can rake. But my number 1 pick, and somebody that will universally probably play better for most people than Devers does, is Jose Ramirez. This card has been insane for me. My only complaint is that he is a midget, so a lot of times he lays out for those balls at third base, and they're just out of reach for him. But other than that, this card just mashes. And if you run the Ripken boost with him, he's basically maxed contact-wise across the board, max clutch, has great speed for a third baseman, good defense, and is a switch hitter. There is just not a whole lot to not like about this J-Ram card. Also has a lot of versatility, right? He's a great left fielder. He's a great second baseman. Probably would keep him away from shortstop, but in general, he's top tier at so many positions, it's hard to pick one, so I put him as primary. In my opinion, I think Bo Bichette, probably the third best shortstop in the game. Not really somebody whose swing I like, but I know a lot of people do like his swing, and they do hit very well with the card. He has very good fielding. His speed's a little bit lackluster, but, shortstop's a hard position to do everything well. And really only I think the number one shortstop in the game does everything well. But Bo is decent. He's very good. If you did grind that BR program, he was not a bad pick by any means. Number two, Javi Baez, a card that I am notoriously high on at this point. Absolutely love this card. I think his swing is elite. I don't mind the vision, and I think he plays great defense. The thing he has over Bo is he's going to be a lot faster at shortstop. So he's going to have more range. He can get those balls that, just make it past the third baseman and maybe get like a Jeter throw across the diamond. He's going to snag those slow rollers that go up the middle that maybe Bo would just be out of reach of. So I think he brings better defensive value, and I actually think his swing is better, contrary to what most people think. Just a little bit pricey, and a card that not too many people have. And my number one, is there any doubt? It's Ellie. I don't think it's too debatable, honestly. Switch hitter, great power across the board, and absolutely just mashes against righties. And if you run the Ripken boost, then he's absolutely nasty in that regard. Basically becomes 125 across the board with 125 clutch, 99 speed, and basically maxed out fielding. The card is disgusting. It's one of the best statistical cards we've got all year. Is his swing that great? I don't think so. It's very good. It's a lot better than Mickey's, in my opinion. But it is still not a top tier swing like some other switch hitters that we'll get to, and J-Ram, who I've already talked about. But he is still very good, and the defensive value he brings at short, which is probably the second most important position in my opinion. I think short is very important defensively, and center field is very important defensively. Those two can be interchangeable, but having great defenders at those two premium positions can win you a lot of games, honestly, and take a lot of runs off the board. So, number three at second base, for me, it's the Semien card. A lot of people would probably put Jackie here. He doesn't have the pop that I would like to see of my second baseman, and Semien does pretty much everything just as well, other than speed, which, like I say in the show, doesn't necessarily matter. If I had to pick one position for speed to matter, it would be center field. Next to that, it would be shortstop and second base, so I guess he kind of has that argument. But Semien has a good arm, and he has 99 reaction at second base. With a good swing and more power than Jackie. So for me, he's over Jackie. If you want to argue Jackie, I can see it. But it doesn't really matter because number two for me is still this Corey Seager card. He is a core card. He's going to be available for the rest of the year. And with the Ripken boost, you could use him for the rest of the year. The card is still nasty. Just struggles a little bit more now since we have Randy and John. But in general, still a very fine option at second base. Just not really gonna mess with our number one option, the new Ketel Marte. This card is crazy. Almost has max contact against both sides. The power is somewhat lackluster, but it's still like 10, 15 more power than somebody like Jackie or Semien has, and he's a switch hitter. And he plays good defense, good enough defense to where it doesn't really matter. It doesn't ever really hurt you. He shouldn't make too many errors. And he's got a good arm, right? He is an outfielder that plays second base. He's got a good arm. It's going to help for turning double plays. And you notice stuff like that. So, moving on to first base, my third pick would be Vlad, a card I don't really love. I don't love his swing. I think it's fine. He has a lot of hitting quirks. He has very good hitting stats. And really, there's not a whole lot to write home about. First base was a lot weaker than I thought it was going into this, but that's just how it is. So we will get to our number two option, who I believe is the better right-handed first baseman, Austin Riley. He's probably going to play better for most people. I think his swing is slightly better. He has equal quirks to Vlad, has a little bit less power, but more contact, and he's faster. Should play a better defensive first base than Vlad. Really not a whole lot to not like about Austin Riley. I think they are two very similar cards, but for me personally, I would take Riley over him. And for me personally, I would take Bellinger over both of them. This is a card that has a lot of value in the outfield as well. But for me personally, and working him into my lineup, I think he plays first the best for me. But like I said, if he was not able to, my second pick would be Austin Riley. And I would probably fit Bellinger into one of these outfield spots. Probably not center. He is a little bit slower than probably what you would want out of a center fielder. which brings us to the captain of the defense, the other captain of the defense, I guess, the catcher. I've been singing this Schwarber's praises forever. He is dirt cheap now. He's like 25K last time I checked. And he goes on the Ripken team if you do not already use Ripken. So he is very good, has a very good lefty swing. Catcher defense doesn't matter. Has some decent quirks, absolutely rakes. If you've ever used a Schwarber card, you know how nasty this one is. And he's just a stud. And for that, I think he's my number 3 best catcher in the game. There's some other arguments, like maybe Real Muto or Will Smith, but for me, it's definitely Schwarber. Number 2, Joe Mauer. Is there any doubt? A very decent left-handed swing, has good quirks, has great stats, great contact numbers, great clutch numbers, and is probably still the best defensive catcher. But for me personally, if you can have a switch hitter somewhere, why not have a switch hitter there? So I think Adley's a little bit better. I think Adley's swing is definitely worse than Mauer's, but he is a switch hitter. The defense is negligible at best. You can't really tell a difference. Adley's blocking has been kind of suspect for me. But me personally, Joe Mauer's a set 2 card. Adley's a set 3 card. He's going to be there for a while, and I don't think it's worth wildcarding Mauer. So for that reason, Adley is, I think, the best catcher in the game. So DH, I couldn't pick out too many DHs. In general, I would just pick one of these other positions that I've already gone over and take one of the players you like from there. Like for me personally, right now on my current team, it is Hank Aaron, but for you guys, it could be somebody else. I think this Castellanos is a decent shout. Will always have max contact, has good enough power, has a great swing, and good hitting quirks. As long as this card doesn't have to play the field, he's an amazing card, and there's really no complaints about him. My number 2 pick, I guess, other than anybody you would want, is Juan Soto. Has a great lefty swing. It's not probably as good as Soto swings in the past because he changed his IRL batting stance, but he still has a lot of those quirks, a lot of those live quirks that will help him hit even better. The only problem is his contact against lefty, and his power against lefties is a little bit low. But if you do run the Ripken boost, it does kind of help stabilize that. And then, like I said, my number 1 pick is anybody you want. Anybody from these other positions. Jock Peterson would probably be a prime candidate to go play DH for you. For me, it's Hank Aaron. I try to limit as many lefties as I can. And we will hop back. I will be right back with the pitchers. So, here are the pitchers I've decided on. I believe I have 11 pitchers for you guys. I have my actual 5 behind it, but I wanted to throw in some set 3 options and some guys I think are worth using as well. And number 11, these are kind of ordered in the level of confidence I have in them. Number 11 would be Satchel Paige. Very good outlier. Fastball, but the problem is the sinker. The sinker control is a little all over the place. The screwball control is a little all over the place. And on paper, this card ended up being a lot better than what I think he actually is, but he is still a solid option. Player of the month, Shohei. Very good option. Again, struggles with those controls. Gonna eat people alive on those lower ranks. On higher ranks where you start to face more patient players that have a better eye, he is going to struggle, but he does have a better pitch mix than a traditional Ohtani card would. Skeens, probably one of the better cutters I've seen all year. It is very good. It serves a purpose. It does a lot of different things depending on where you put it. Just not a huge fan of the sinker and slurve or slider and slurve combo. He does not have a sinker. He has an outlier 4-seam. If this card did have a sinker instead of that slurve, he would be absolutely nasty. Would absolutely love this card. But just having a cutter, a slurve, and a slider, it's a little bit overkill on horizontal outward movement, and it ends up in a lot of foul balls. Another guy I have a lot of confidence in is the new World Series reward, Al Leiter. I think this card is very good. He has a very non-traditional but meta for the show type of pitch mix. I think he has a 4-seam cutter, sinker, slider, and a curveball. So the curveball kind of sucks, but every other pitch is very good, and he is very tunnel heavy. You don't really know what he's throwing until it's there. He has a lot of value on those higher ranks. Probably not going to be too good for people on those lower ranks. Dustin May, we saw his charisma card earlier in the year. This is just a better version of that card. But unfortunately for Dustin May, the control did not go up by very much, if at all. And pretty much every hitter in the game, not named Mike Trout, got better. So he's probably going to struggle a lot more than he did at the start of the year, especially because a lot of people got a lot of reps off this May card at the start of the year. So we'll go in reverse order here. I'm going to delete Satchel. I think this Matt Cain card has potential, right? He's probably number 11, honestly, not Satchel. But Cain has potential. The problem is his sinker par is just too big. He cannot place the sinker where he needs to consistently. His mechanics are kind of funky, and he throws a okay pitch mix. And obviously, the through nines are great, right? He threw a perfect game. But, with that perfect game, you'd probably like to see those walks be a little bit higher because he cannot control anything out of his hand. On Pure Legend, for me, he was not very good. His control was all over the place. But that being said, if you are struggling, I think he is a good fifth option type of starter. Next up, I guess, yeah, we'll just keep going like this. Diga. I am pleasantly surprised that Digo is not a bad pitcher. The slurve being 90 miles an hour is very effective. He has most of his value as a two-way, but I do still think he can be one of the top 5 pitchers in the game. Just depends on how you use him, depends on how people see him online. But still a very good, very solid card. So, my number 4 starter, Roy Halladay. Basically, the quintessential high difficulty pitcher. Has very good pitches that can be tunneled well together and has amazing control. He can put it basically exactly where you want, whenever you want it to be there. And for that reason, he is very high for me. Number 3, Jacob deGrom. A card that on paper will probably perform better than he actually will. He will probably eat some people alive, but I think most people have gotten a lot of reps over the years on deGrom. I still do think he is a solid pitcher. He's just not going to turn out. None of these guys, right? None of these guys mentioned so far are going to turn out starts for you like the first 2 guys on the list. They are just a different level of unhittable. But everybody else is solid, and I think these 3 are top of the bunch of everybody else. With that being said, our number 2 most unhittable starter is John Don. Was there really any doubt? He's absolutely nasty. The fork ball is incredibly slow, especially when you mix that with an outlier fastball the way he has it, and an outlier slider, which is a pitch that we have not seen a lot of. He's absolute filth, and the control on the slider is very good, even on those high legend difficulties. If you face somebody that uses pinpoint, and they perfect every release with this John Donaldson card, you are in for a rough day, especially if you let him get his confidence up. He can be borderline unhittable. I think the only thing saving a lot of players is that they saw him every game when the stamina glitch was a thing. So there is a level of comfort there with him, but he is still incredibly hard to hit even despite that. And nobody sums that up better than our number 1, Randy, who will be expiring soon. But I do foresee some people wildcarding him just because he is by far the best pitcher in the game. When you pitch Randy in a game, that gives you the best chance to win that game. And so I think a lot of people will probably still gravitate towards pitching him, even though we do have somebody like John Donaldson that is also a very solid Randy type level pitcher. We do not get too many pitchers close to the power level of a Randy card. John is probably the closest to that, and I was hoping deGrom would be close, but he's just under that. These 2 are by far 1A, 1B in the game. Randy just has better through nines and a weirder arm slot. So we will be back with the bullpen, and that will be the end of the video. So guys, here is my bullpen. So first of all, we'll go through the honorable mentions, or I guess we can go 1-2, 1-2 at each position, kind of make it more suspenseful for you guys. But in general, if they're not in my bullpen, I don't think they are necessarily the best. I just wanted to throw some honorable mentions out there. Guys that didn't quite make the cut, but are still solid options. This Eckersley is kind of a weird pitcher. Not a lot of people have used him. I haven't seen him online. He has a funky delivery, and it can mess with some people. But in general, I do not think he is that great. This Loizaga card, in theory, should be great. I think he kind of suffers from that Corbin Burns syndrome of a lot of people saw the WBC one, so they kind of know how to hit this one. But he is still a solid card nonetheless. Goose, Goose was solid for me. He wasn't anything to write home about. Control on the changeup is bad. Control on the sinker is bad. Control on the slurve is bad. Really, the only pitch he can throw for a strike consistently is the four seam. And for that reason, it knocks him a little bit, but he still can be difficult to hit. Camilo Duvall, I've said it all year, very tough on Legend. Every other difficulty is BP, so for most of you guys, I would probably steer clear from him. Kimbrel, a card I underrated for a long time. I will own up to that. Has a weird release. He throws with like gyro spin on the ball. The ball like rolls out of his hand and he falls over while he throws it. It can be distracting, even though his pitch mix isn't necessarily the greatest. Hoffman, good change of pace guy. If you've been throwing Randy or Aroldis Chapman, just a flamethrower, Hoffman can be a good change of pace guy. Throws very slow. Scoots Magoots, very underrated card. He is basically nothing on the marketplace, and he has a somewhat weird delivery with a pretty decent pitch mix and decent through nines. One of the more underrated reliever cards we've gotten all year. Sorry if I'm fumbling words a lot. Yunier Cano, very solid card. Like I've said several times, his card earlier in the year got lit up for me, so I kind of steer clear from him, but I do see the potential with him. So our first reliever in my bullpen is Aaron Loup. Should be a mainstay in most people's bullpen. I think a lot of people are kind of getting used to him at this point. He's getting a little more predictable, a little easier to hit against online. But he is still probably the best lefty specialist in the game, for my buck at least. Number 2, Billy Wagner. I'm not very high on this card, but I had to throw him in there. I needed another lefty specialist. I like to have 3 in my pen. Some people get away with 2. For me, the magic number is typically 3. So Billy is solid, and he is set 3, one of our only good set 3 lefty relievers. So in the future, hopefully we can get some new set 3 lefty relievers or set 3 relievers in general that are good. Number 3 in my pen, Gregory Santos, very underrated card. Has a very weird delivery. His arm moves at like 120 miles an hour when he throws the ball. It goes from being directly behind him to getting delivered to home plate in the blink of an eye. It's absolutely crazy. Has an outlier sinker, which can mess with timing windows, especially if you're on a bad server. And it has a decent pitch mix overall. Very underrated card. Not a card I see a lot of people at low ranks using. A card that only the top end players really are using at the moment, because most people haven't caught on yet. Number 4, Felix. Still very hard to hit, especially if you end up on a bad server. I had a game on stream where I was on this like absolutely god awful server, where you had to pretty much guess out the hand what pitch was being thrown. Felix dominates in games like those, where, the fastball looks the same as the splitter, which looks very close to the slider out the hand. And there's only really very minute differences. And if you're on that just an awful server that you have to swing as soon as it comes out of his hand, you're going to have a hard time guessing. So, number 5, Joel. This is another very underrated reliever card. If you guys have not played Moonshot and seen his common card, which it's probably not common anymore since he got Player of the Month, very weird release. The ball like falls off of his hand. It's very Kimbrel-esque. It's very janky. It's very weird. And I believe he has a 5-pitch mix, which is very nice for him. So one of my setup spots is Kenley. I think still a very dominant righty reliever. Just struggles on that true legend difficulty to find the zone sometimes. But other than that, phenomenal. I think a lot of people have started to see him a little too much. But in general, still a very effective reliever. Also set 2, will be expiring very soon. My other setup is my final lefty specialist. It is Aroldis Chapman. Still very good against lefties. Can be tough against right-handed batters, but a lot of people have gotten more comfortable against him. So, do with that what you will. Also, a set 2 lefty reliever. So, again, it's pretty much just going to be Billy Wagner from here out, which is kind of a problem. Hopefully, SDS addresses that. I was hoping they would do it with BR, but they decided to bring out Dustin May. And then my closer for my team is Mo. Absolutely nasty sinker. Something about his arm slot, the way it drops off the table. Most of his other pitches are kind of bad, excluding the cutter, but still a very dominant reliever. And that is what I believe to be the best starting lineup in the game, the best starting rotation in the game, and the best bullpen in the game. You don't have to have, obviously, these exact cards in like these sets. But if you have any mixture of these cards, I think you can have a more than successful team. And you can't really blame your team for losing at that point. These are the top-end cards. I don't think there's too many better options at any position. I may have missed 1 or 2, But in general, I think these are the best cards for you guys to be successful online. And as always, if you did enjoy the comment, if you did enjoy the content, feel free to like and comment on the video and subscribe if you have seen multiple of the channel's videos and have enjoyed the content. Again, I apologize for fumbling over the words. You can see it is very early in the morning, right before I'm about to leave for a trip. But I wanted to make sure you guys have Sunday, Monday content because I'm not going to be here. But in general, guys, till next time, peace.